Dudes, welcome the heck back to this video about bad writing advice. I don't know. I feel like being critical today. I woke up and I chose judgment and I'm okay with that. So I thought we would hang out on Reddit for a hot minute and just make fun of some bad writing advice together. I'm going to have an honest moment here. I don't know much about Reddit. I don't go on Reddit. I've heard great stories, great times within Reddit, but I don't know what I'm getting into. So I feel like this video can go multiple ways just in combination with that. So we're going to keep an open mind and just kind of dive right into this thing. So let's do this. What's the worst writing advice you've come across so far? This was asked 5 months ago, so fairly recent. The first one says, I once entered a short screenplay into a contest. Page limit was like 5 pages, and the judge, a film student, got back to me with a comment along the lines of, why doesn't this follow A Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell? All good stories have to. Like, excuse me for not incorporating a view of mythology that's meant to describe large epics into my short script. I'll use a quarter of the page for the hero to descend into the underworld, another quarter for them to have a revelation here, and another quarter for them to walk out of it. Honestly, a lot of the bad advice is to learn and use only one storytelling format. If you know how to write is one thing, be it a monomyth or a mystery box or whatever, a lot of you write will feel derivative of something else. So I think what this dude is saying is that she wants him to follow a formula, and he's like, no way, man. I get it. You want to have like a structure. You want to have the rising action. You want to have the hero's story, like the backstory. You want to know like where his weak spots are. Like, I get that. But we're also not writing Percy Jackson here. Like, that's already been done. And I think this guy is just kind of wanting to do something a little bit new and different, which I like. I would find that interesting. Okay, this guy's, even most hero's journeys stories prior to Joseph Campbell, the ones he based the idea on, do not strictly follow the outline of the hero's journey. It's an amalgamated framework if you have trouble figuring out how to structure things. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, like, use it as a guide, but kind of take some detours if you want. I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. I feel like it kind of keeps things a little funky fresh. I think the worst writing advice is write what you know. In one way, it's good advice, which is badly misapplied. When it means use emotional inspiration from your own life, it is good advice. When it means if you are a 21-year-old white woman from the West Country who works as a vet nurse, you can only write from the perspective of a 21-year-old white woman from West Country who also works as a vet nurse, then it's terrible, awful, no good advice. I would concur. It's good advice when it means research before you write. Yes, you want your writing to be accurate. You want your writing to be informed. You want your writing to be, at least in my opinion, realistic. So it seems like the theme with the first two are just like taking writing advice very, very literally and seriously. That I do disagree with. Like, all of these bits and pieces of writing advice, take it as a guideline, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. I hit my hand really hard. It's not a hard and fast rule, right? Like, use it as a structure. Lean on it. Kind of play around with it if you want to. I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. Exactly. Writing is largely about exploring ideas we aren't 100% certain on and exploring people who we aren't. I mean, when you were a kid, okay, when we were growing up, we played outside. We used our imagination. We did role play. We did dress up, or at least I did dress up. I pretended at one point, I remember my neighbor was over at my house. We were roughly the same age, and we were both wearing sparkly dresses because we were dressing up. And I remember asking her, I don't know why I remember this, but I just remember asking her, hey, let's be fairy princesses today. Do I have experience as a fairy? No. Do I have experience as being a princess? Not really. So what audacity do I have at 6 years old to be asking if we can play fairy princesses? Because it's fun. Because it's fun. That's what it should be. Writing should be fun. And you should be exploring different perspectives, different experiences, different characters. What kind of character do you want to be today? I don't know. I don't want to be that one. I kind of want to be this one today, right? Like, you play around with it. It's structured, guided play. Maybe that's what I'm getting at. This is guided play. The worst writing advice for me personally is to heavily outline everything before I write it. I do that. I do use and rely on outlines, but too much emphasis on character backgrounds or world building just becomes a procrastination tool for me. Yeah, you know what? Yeah. So before I wrote my book, which is second shelf closest to my head. It's got that yellow-brown kind of cover on it. That's my book. It's called The Finer Things Club. It's all about my experience living and working in Yellowstone National Park as a housekeeper. case you were curious. Before I wrote mine, I had so many ideas. In fact, I had so many. I'm going to show you the box. Where's the box? I don't have the box with me. It's in the other room. But it's a whole shoebox full of ideas that I have, right? And I would play around with these ideas. And I remember not knowing the first thing about writing a book. So I was working on this idea. I didn't know what I was doing, and I would print out all these character sheets and spend hours coming up with the characters. I feel like I put way more emphasis on like all the worksheets and like what is my character like and dislike, and the absolute specifics when I may or may not be using them at all when putting the story together. I was spending more time on the elements rather than crafting a story made up of those elements. Oh my God, I have feelings about this. To get a degree in it, you do not need an MFA. You don't need a journalism, English, creative writing degree. To call yourself a writer. You don't need that. I don't have that. My whole background is in elementary education. I taught 1 year as a teacher, and I was like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. No thanks. I have a lot of respect, a lot new perspective, but I'm moving on. Grateful for the experience, but wouldn't do it again. Yet, I became an author anyway. Why? Because I wanted to. I had a story that I wanted to tell, and I thought people would benefit from it. I think that's really all you need. You just need an idea, a routine, whatever that frequency is, whatever that looks like to you, and the accountability and self-discipline to be able to see it through. Because one really interesting statistic that I heard was that like 98% of people say that they want to write a book. Only 3% write the manuscript, and only 1%, less than 1%, get it published. I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know. I've tried looking for the exact source of that quote, but I haven't been able to find it. The closest thing I was able to find was a New York Times article that mentioned that, like, somewhere in the 2000s. It's outdated, but it's interesting nonetheless. Don't use adverbs. Yeah, Stephen King just entered the chat. If you didn't get that reference, Stephen King, his book is right next to mine on the top shelf, second from, what is this direction? Left, whatever that black one is right next to my book. His book is called On Writing, and he says that the road to hell is paved in adverbs. Lovingly, charismatically, confusingly. Like, there are more meatier, substantial words that do the job with more of a visual to it, right? Instead of saying, he nervously chatted with the girl. That's pretty empty. Instead, you might say something like, oh, he picked at his nails and shuffled his feet while he was talking to her. Show, don't tell, right? So don't use adverbs. I would say to use adverbs sparingly. Sometimes it's okay. My book has adverbs in it. I bet you somewhere in one of Stephen King's 10,000 books, he's got an adverb in there. Sometimes it's just easier to use an adverb. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, but it's just a guideline, you know? It's a guideline. Don't use adverbs. Translates to maybe take a break from using so many of them. Find other words that maybe pack more of a punch or show more of a visual. I really like that these people on Reddit see that there is flexibility in writing. I get the appeal now with Reddit, at least in this section. Yeah, plan all of your characters as thoroughly as possible before you start writing. Their names, their background, their favorite food, childhood pets, color of socks. Like, I did that, and I ended up not writing the story at all. And did I use those details? No. I'll think of them when it comes to the point where I have to write it down. But like, I don't think it's, in my opinion, I don't think it's worth writing every single idiosyncrasy down that a character has, because you may or may not use it in the book. If you do use it, it might not have relevance because you're plugging it in so you feel like you're using it even though it doesn't really have a point in whatever it is that you're saying. That's just my opinion. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about is fiction. Like, this is very fiction heavy. I'm a nonfiction girl. I tend to be extremely picky with fiction, but most of my stuff is catered towards nonfiction authors. So this is kind of like, I kind of like that I get to exercise a different muscle, because fiction, in my opinion, is a lot harder than writing nonfiction, I think, because there's a lot, you don't have something that already happened to rely on. Like with my book, it's a memoir, so I didn't really have to worry too much about structure because I already know how everything happened. I had journal entries and diary entries and stuff that I could lean on for, when did that thing happen? Oh, what did that thing smell like? What did that thing look like? I was so fortunate to have that to lean on. But if you're writing fiction, you're kind of coming up with everything from scratch. And I feel like that's way harder. Just Again, my opinion. The thing is, writing, publishing books, what people like, what people don't like, what people are going to buy, what people aren't going to buy, what people are going to represent, what they're not going to represent, it's so subjective. It's so subjective. There is no one right way to write a book because everyone knows themselves better than everyone else. They know what their habits are. They know what their weaknesses are. They know what they want to say. So that's where you get to know about you, your behaviors, your habits, and in combination with the stories that you want to tell, come up with your own book and your own writing routine. There's no right way to do it. Everyone can be creative in their own way. That's my stance, and I think that's probably where I'm going to end the video, otherwise I'm going to get all heated. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was kind of fun scrolling through some of these people's perspectives. I hope this kind of got a conversation going, got you thinking about some new things. I want to hear from you also. What is the either best or worst piece of writing advice that maybe you've ever heard of? I would be very curious to hear about that. So I will see you in the next video, and take care until then. See you later.